my talk. Here we go. He said he living life as a gringo, where you question where you fit in every time you mingle. They say you do this with not enough that. My rapping is really bad. This life as a gringo.
Yes, hello and welcome to another episode of Life as a Gringo. I am Dramos, of course, and if you're watching the video of this, you notice that I'm not in my set. I'm currently in my living room right now. We're coming off of a holiday weekend, and I was going to do a whole other different episode for today, but I was literally just like going down memory lane, if you will. I'll kind of rewind a little bit here. I got an email the other day, and it was from a website that is Latino based, and they did like a ranking of like the 100 most influential Latino centric podcasts. And to my surprise, I was on that list for this podcast, Life as a Gringo. Very grateful. But then I randomly got another email, and it turns out an old podcast of mine called First Generation Talks, which is actually the first podcast that I pitched when the Cultura podcast network was created. Before Life as a Gringo was even really an idea, I was originally trying to get that podcast picked up. And it was a podcast I did with this incredible hip-hop artist named Dramos. He's of Dominican descent, originally from New York. He lives in LA now. But we started it literally, I don't even know, like a month before what ended up happening with becoming the pandemic, essentially. I think we did 2 episodes in studio, and then all of a sudden the pandemic happened. And it was short-lived. I think we maybe did 10 episodes or something like that. But it was always a really insightful and therapeutic experience, I think, for me. I really appreciate Dramos. He's been on the show before on some of our Thursday Trends episodes. I think last season was the last time he was on. But just something that I really fuck with. And I, to make a long story short, that email coming in, I kind of went back and I was walking my dog outside, and I was just listening. I was like skimming through old episodes, and I was really taken aback in a good way by one of the episodes. And it was an episode we did with a hip hop artist named Andy Mineo. And this was, in the thick of the pandemic, so it was all done via Zoom. And he had just moved from New York to Atlanta. And I remember, like, in retrospect, how impactful this conversation was for me. Just to kind of like, I don't want to take too long setting this up because it's a long episode as is, but Andy had left New York, moved to Atlanta, and by the way, Andy is an independent hip hop artist, so he's not signed to a label. Everything he funds, he does it himself, and he had a viral hit with this song called "Coming in Hot." Right, the song was called "Coming in Hot," and he was somebody who has been very forward thinking in his career with the independent stuff, but also with thinking what happens when the music stuff dries up. And he essentially read the book Think and Grow Rich. He read the book Rich Dad Poor Dad, like I did, or I might have read it after I even talked to him. I kind of probably started it and then finished it after I talked to him. But essentially, he was like, I got to start thinking about my future, my legacy, what happens if and when this music stuff dries up. And he was living in New York at the time, like I said, and basically said to himself, like, living in New York has become a liability. And he'll explain this to you in the interview. And he basically picks up and moves to Atlanta, ends up buying a couple properties out there, and sets himself up with basically properties that now pay for themselves, and he no longer has to worry about rent or income. And he just has a couple different interesting stories that, for me, changed my perspective a bit. And I think were the motivating factor that pushed me across the finish line of getting out of the city, buying my first property, and really, taking the reins on wanting to be independently a creative and my own business person and, take life into my hands with trying to make financially savvy decisions. And it was a really inspirational conversation for me, from his spirituality to, the fact that he's a married man and talks about, that relationship with his wife and how he balances that with being this artist and all these different things. And I'm listening back to it. I'm like, man, this was, and I didn't necessarily recognize it at the time, but I think this was a pivotal conversation that really, I think, helped me out during that time period and really subconsciously motivated a lot of the decisions I made, for the next few years after that conversation. So with all that said, it's a long-winded way of saying I'm going to share that podcast episode because I feel like I know for a fact by the numbers, very few of you, if any of you who listen to this podcast, actually heard that conversation. But like I said, it was so incredibly impactful for me. I have to share it. And yeah, it's happened during the pandemic. I think we recorded it during May of 2020. So while we're still pretty much, the world was shut down for the most part. So some of it might be, a little aged as far as the information. But overall, I really was still motivated and inspired by this conversation so much, even here in 2025. And it was a great reminder and a great way for me to reflect on where I'd come from. And I think at times, I always use that reference of the bowling alley, those bumpers. Sometimes we need things that provide the bumper to kind of knock us back on track. And this sort of had a bit of that effect on me as I was listening to it. And I really just wanted to share it. I thought it was a great conversation. So with that said, I'm going to share this conversation via our Mi Gente segment. This is an episode of my old short-lived podcast called First Generation Talks with my guy Radamiz and our guest Andy Mineo. Mi Gente. First Generation Talks episode, is it 8 at this point?
8.
I think it's 8.
Yeah.
Myself, Dramos, Radamiz.
Yes.
Special guest today, man, hip hop artist Andy Mineo. What's good, dude? How you doing?
I'm good. How y'all feeling?
We're good, bro. I mean, so we were talking off mic before we get on here. You just made the move to Atlanta?
Yup.
How we feeling, man?
I'm down in Atlanta. I just don't think I'm coming back.
I remember we were talking about that a little bit, right before you moved, because we were talking about some stuff and just the difference in pace. So I know you're from Syracuse, but you were living in NYC, where was it Uptown in the Bronx or where was that?
It was Uptown, Washington Heights. So it was Harlem, Washington Heights, Inwood. So I kept moving up every.
Damn! Oh, you're moving up that A train. Okay.
Yeah.
What was the move? What was the decision like? Yeah.
What was the move to Atlanta for?
Yeah, what was the purpose of that? Cause that's a big difference, man. Central Uptown and moving your way on up and the switch is crazy.
So I started in Syracuse, like you said, grew up there. Then I went to college and stayed. So it was half my life Syracuse, upstate, half my life in the city. And then I basically, me and my wife just started, leveling up mentally and financially and just thinking what's legacy look like for us? Are we going to own things? Are we going to own property? I'm making good money off music. How long is this going to last? How am I going to invest it? What am I going to do? So a lot of those conversations happened, and it just began with Rich Dad, Poor Dad, just reading that book about finances, understanding what assets and liabilities are. And I realized in a lot of ways that living in New York was a liability. Because you can't own anything for real unless you got crazy paper. And if you don't own anything, then what do you have? You know what I'm saying? So I love that Jay-Z lyric. He's like, y'all killing each other over the block that your mama's renting.
Right. Nah, the 444 album. Yes.
Crazy. We really, we think places this is going to get super deep, super quick, but even conversations about
go for it, bro. I'm out of here.
Well, it's conversations about gentrification is crazy.
Yes.
It's I am all for people maintaining their culture, their space, and their dynamic, because that's what makes New York City such an interesting and dope place. But if you don't own anything, you can't say anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that might be a controversial view, but I'm like, damn, is the truth is we don't own anything. So how are we supposed to be able to say someone else can't come in and buy up or do whatever else? And so I realized like buying in New York is just such a crazy, difficult thing. So I was like, man, what if we moved to Atlanta? And we bought 2 houses. I got down, I bought a crib.
Amazing.
We flipped it, renovated it, and we bought another one. It's like now I might never have to pay rent again in my entire life because the properties are paying for themselves the way I set it up. Mm-hmm. And, that's just a financial burden to free you of $2,000-$3,000 a month. Mm-hmm. And it's like, how could I not? And on top of that, they got the major airport here so I can get around the world.
Right.
And they have, the studios here that I get to work out of. So it made a lot of sense for us. And I got people down here too. So it was the right move, man. And I kind of feel like resentful towards New York some days.
Yo, you dropped the whole, there's a lot to unpack even in just that. Real quick, one of the topics, and this is something that me and my parents talk about a lot, because I think nowadays, especially like low income housing families, you know what I'm saying? If you were raised in like hoods, if you were raised just displaced in the sense of you don't come from money and you don't come from knowing ownership in the United States, specifically, let's say the tri-state borough. And we talk about, living in Bushwick. Like I grew up in Bed-Stuy / Bushwick, meaning I lived in Bed-Stuy basically my whole life. I was really born in Williamsburg, so like Southside Williamsburg. And then, but a lot of my family just being Dominican all lived in Bushwick. And my godmother definitely owned a building in Bushwick off of the L train. And I had other cousins and family members that own property all around the areas that, have like risen up and made a whole bunch of people rich. Yep. What we were talking about is back then, at least like for immigrants or just people new to the country or new to the system and new to and to really understand what New York was back then in the 70s and 80s and 90s, like it's not like now where you kind of have the liberty to, and you have more knowledge of like where to hide out in the city and neighborhoods are safer because of gentrification or whatever the case. Back then, if you bought those buildings, you had to live in those neighborhoods. And that shit was not safe. Mm. You know what I mean? Like Southside was just like a lot of drug addicts and gang culture. Bushwick, the same thing too. A lot of like warehouses and just empty blocks, like, you know what I'm saying, where there's a lot of violence and a lot of drugs and a lot of danger. And specifically for my parents, and I think a lot of immigrants that come into the country in those times, the 90s, all of that, is that you have, one, a lack of information, and you're still, like, not only do you have a lack of information on the areas that you're living, but you have a lack of information on the paperwork and the contracts and what banks and whatever systems may be setting you up because you have a language barrier. You don't actually know how to defend yourself. Even if you have the idea, you don't have the linguistics and the, you know what I mean? Like, so it's like, yeah, like my father told me, like a lot of the bodega owners and families had money. They were too scared to invest it because the neighborhoods were whack, even though it was cheap. And they also didn't want to get caught up in paperwork like, one of their peers who got themselves fucked up because they knew a little bit of English and thought, you know what? It'll all work out. So it's like it's a lot, and that mindset has carried over where now we're like, yo, ownership, and realize like, damn, like the city right that we love is like kind of like pulled from under it. So it's a trip, man. It's a trip. Right?
Yeah, I mean, if you don't own anything, you kind of don't have you don't have to say, and any like people could just screw you. You like, what are you gonna do? I feel like in that time it was harder to access information, but I feel like if you are ignorant now, it is your fault. Because if you have Google, like, fam, you can learn a lot. If you have YouTube, you can learn a lot. If you can go to a library and get a book, you can learn a lot. And sometimes it's the voices that we're listening to that are who's pointing us in the right direction. I'll tell you this: I grew up on hip hop. Nobody was talking about this. Nah. So hip hop is aging up, and now you're starting to get OGs like, like Jay, who's like, okay, now I'm a 50-year-old man. I know I was telling y'all like, big pimping, spending cheese. I'm never getting married, but sidebar, I'm married now and I love it. And then like, no,
it's real.
You don't have a lot of resources growing up as a kid who loves hip hop, or you're a minority in a city like New York in the 80s. it's different times, man. But I had to shake. You know,
I love that.
I'm happy it's a good move. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's just like a leveling up, you know, and I think that having these conversations, people seeing that and hearing the experience about it, it allows you to place your priorities in the right place, you know, because I think it's like what you're saying, you know, hip hop, when we were coming up, it was talking about jewelry and you weren't shit if you didn't have a car, you didn't have a, you know, this flashy lifestyle. And now, you know, we have that next generation, you know, people like yourself talking about this, and the Nipsey Hussles of the world talking about ownership and how important that is, and you know, how that's real power. You know what I mean? Like, that's what's really cool. That's what's dope, is owning shit, not just having jewelry for the sake of jewelry, but you got no money in the bank, you know, but you're still wearing a dope chain. It's like, nah, it's dope when you actually own something. You can leave something for your kids, and legacy. I love when you said that you thought about your legacy when it came to this move.
That's right. And let me tell you this real quick. Obviously I rap for a living, right? Mm-hmm. And
bro.
Like, you know, I feel the temptation to do rapper things,
right?
Mm-hmm. Pretty often, like this,
like the Gucci mask, as you said.
Like, I feel the temptation. But you know, I really wanted the Tesla, and I'm like, yo, Tesla, like Elon Musk, like this technology is crazy. This is the future, like the iPhone of cars. So I go to the Tesla dealership. Like, I talk to my financial manager, I talk to my wife, everybody. And I was like, oh, I'm gonna cop. Like, these joints don't really drop in value too much. They're gonna save on gas, all stuff. So I justified all these things, and I get there to the dealership, and let me tell you this: it was the end of, I think, 2017, 2018, when they had incentives if you bought before the end of the year. They give you like $10,000 rebate or whatever. So it was like December 28, 29. It was getting right around that time where if I waited a few more days, I'm gonna lose
the opportunity
money on it. So I was like, all right. So I go, and basically I came to the counter, and Buddy rang me out, and he was like, all right, this would be like, I just got like the Model 3, and it was like $5K. It was like, after tax, everything, $55,000. He's like, I said, yo, I don't know, can I think about it or something? And he was like, well, if you don't get it today, like, that's it. So I was like, dang, because I want to go talk to my wife. I said, hold on, let me talk to my wife. I go over there, I talk with her, and she's like, babe, you work hard. Like, get it.
You deserve it.
Do your thing. And I was like, yo, nah, I'm not getting it. Let's go. And we did. I got the write-off for everybody. Everybody was like, bro, you got it. Just get it.
Right.
Yeah.
I left, and I said, yo, I don't own a crib. So I'm supposed to pull up to my rental property in a $60,000 car.
Yeah.
For my half a clown.
Yeah.
So I decided at that moment, I was like, no, hold on a second. Let me take this same $55K and go put it to work. Came down here, I closed on this property. I put down, I think I only put like $30,000, $40,000 down. And now when we finished renovating it 3 months later, the joint appreciated 50 G's.
Damn.
I made the 50 G's to buy that car by investing it somewhere else first. Right. And now I could take it out of just that and go pick it up.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is it's a priorities thing where it's like, damn, nobody ever told me if I got a $400 car payment a month, $500 car payment a month, go spend the money not on the car, but on a piece of property that'll give me $400 a month to pay for it for free. Like, it's just, it's rewiring the way we think about, you know, stuff. But here's the thing. I had to buy a car still. So I had to buy a 2010 Honda Civic for $6,000 from my brother.
Just to like drive around in the meantime.
I'm a rapper.
I love that.
2010 Honda Civic.
Yeah.
Now, if I care too much about what people think about me, I'm going to feel like a clown.
Yeah. That would hinder you, but that's not the opposite. Right.
I don't, because I feel like my kids are going to own this property. So I'll be in a 2010 Honda Civic for a little bit. You know, and it's these are like the things that I just don't feel like hip hop has a lot of, like the culture. We're really force fed a lifestyle of luxury to like buy things we can't afford to impress people we don't like.
Yeah.
It's just madness. So anyways, I'll get off my soapbox.
Nah, I love that, bro. I like, because it's kind of like coming face to face with your vices, you know what I mean? And not allowing them to dictate what you do and put you in bad positions, you know? Because I think even outside of that, I mean, we're talking about, you know, obviously you like doing rapper things, whatever the case may be. Sometimes we all have those things we do it, but being able to come face to face with that vice and be like, you know what, I'm going to walk away and do something smarter with it. It's the same thing concept of like the idea of where like marriage wasn't cool. You know what I mean? Like as an artist, and it was all about sleeping with multiple women and like, you know, messing around with your girl. And that was like considered cool. And I was actually talking about this on like a live I did where somebody was like, nobody's meant to be with one person for the rest of their life kind of thing. And I don't believe that. I think that to me, that is you giving into your vice. You know what I mean? You allowing that vice to dictate what you're doing, and then now you're just making an excuse for it, you know? So I'm curious for you, man. I obviously, you know, you're married, that whole thing being in this world, like what is sort of the mindset that allows you to kind of be focused on your marriage and keep that healthy, being in a world that is not, you know, sort of healthy to that, I guess?
Yeah. First I say to each his own, man. Like I don't, because I'm married and because I drive a Civic, you know, and I invest in property, don't mean that I'm the standard. Like anybody can do whatever they want, live how they want. I don't, you know, I'm just telling you, giving you game if you want to hear it.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So I ended up getting married 5 years ago. So I've been married 5 years, and I absolutely love it, man. And the reasons why I love marriage is because it does three things for me. One, there's a level of security and safety that that you can't really get anywhere else. Like I remember when I would run around and just try to bag whoever and just, you know, wild out. Like there was always that sense of like nothing's really safe. Like you don't know like when Shorty's gonna be out or when you're gonna be out, or like you can share because you don't know if that information's really it's always this thing of like, I trust you to a degree. In marriage, there's this thing where like you have both come to the table and said, well, I'm 100% in, and like I'm rocking with you no matter what. And it relieves that pressure of like constantly having in the back of your mind, you know. So like I don't have any secrets. Like my wife got my passcodes to my phone, right. Even check, because we have a trust. And like, man, that level of that trust is just something that is it's like I don't need. It's irreplaceable. It gives me a peace in my life that is irreplaceable. And also it forces you to just get face to face with some of your crap. Like most of the time we spend a majority of our life running away from our crap, and we bury it. That's why guys are so emotionally unhealthy, because we just shove everything down. We don't deal with it. Right.
And we're taught to do that. That's an indicator of strength, not showing feelings. But in a relationship, that's the opposite of what is necessary for it to work.
That's right. And we're taught to push it down. If you have feelings, emotions, that's considered a female trait, like the clown for it. There's all these things. And so I'm just realizing like my ideas about manhood, about success, about whatever, what people think about me, it's changing more and more with the years. And so I've come face to face with my crap more often, because when you're in a committed relationship and you say the back door is closed off, like nobody's leaving, we're in here together. You got to work through your issues and work through problems, which makes you a better human. Right. So I love growing with my wife, man.
I love that, man. Wow.
All right, I'm going to pop in here real quick. We'll take a quick break, and then we'll be right back. All right, we are back, and now back to the conversation.
Because you have someone whom you love, cherish, are aiming to build a better future with, all of the good things. I mean, from what I've heard of you for years, you've always been transparent, and like how you mentioned in the Jay-Z stuff. And I mean, you speak about this on your last album, The Work in Progress joint, which was dope. The EPs are dope. The Arrow, the Sword, all of that. I feel like you, and it's also why I invited you to this show. Like you're a transparent person. You can tell that you've sat with yourself. You can tell that you sat in the mirror, and if something is still a question, then let's find the answer as opposed to throw it away. But when you have something like a marriage, and you're forced to face yourself because someone else is a direct result of that, and then now you're an artist though, so it's like you have also the responsibility in music. I mean, I don't know about how it is for you, but for me, if I'm not as real as I can be for whatever the song needs from me, I've let it down. So it's like sometimes the illest findings of my evolution I find on the beat. I'm like, wow, like here are the words for the evolution that I've been going through in my regular life, and whatever the case may be. Is there a relationship between the transparency? Like the more transparent you become in your relationship, the more transparent you become in your music, and vice versa? Or how do you, like, just what's your view on that?
Yeah, I think like as you grow as a person, and marriage is one of the things that's really forced me to grow. One, because my wife is Boricua, like she, you know, and I grew up an Italian kid from upstate New York. So one, being married to a woman who is also a minority, who is also, you know, from New York City, and I'm from Chicago, like, I'm already learning a ton about my own masculinity that's been jacked up, about my views of race, my views, all these things. So she has been helping me shape those things, which has evolved who I am as a person, and has come out in my music. Two is, you know, I've accessed more things. Like when you have to deal with it, you access more things inside of you. And that's not just from her, but it's also from things like therapy, where I don't know if I would have ever gone to therapy if my wife hadn't pushed me towards it. Like, yo, I think you need therapy. And that's super taboo in most communities, where it's like, oh, what's wrong with you? Mm-hmm. And it's kind of bugged out, because when you think about it, if I were to say like, yo, you should go to the doctor, we wouldn't blink twice. We'd be like, oh yeah, I need to go do my checkups to make sure that my body is running good. We also have an emotional being that we never check in on. Mm-hmm. And so like, I feel like therapy and working through your crap is like getting a PhD in yourself. It's like understanding who you really are underneath, because we have this external man, but we also have this spirit man inside of us. And we have to carry that person around with us every single day inside this physical body. And it's bugged out that we care so much about other people, but so little about our actual self. You know what I'm saying? When I have to live with this person every day, but the people in high school I cared about, impressing or whatever, I don't even know them no more. Like, but I'm still walking around with Andy.
With you.
Mm-hmm. And so, you know, it's just that's the evolution of me as a man, is like, you know, growing through marriage, going through therapy, and then I'm unlocking stuff. And as I unlock that stuff, I'm pulling it into the music. That's all I know how to do. You know, my real life experiences become, you know, records.
Yeah, I love that perspective. You're talking about your girl being a woman of color. I'm Puerto Rican and my girl's actually Italian, so I've had a similar dynamic where
switch, right?
And I have to sometimes, I think, kind of put her on some game of like, you know, like about racism and you know how it really does exist. And you know, she's blessed. You know, she didn't have to experience a lot of those things, and you know, was born in the suburbs of Staten Island, so she doesn't know that, you know, what it's like being in certain areas in New York City and experiencing, you know, people hating on you just because you are a person of color and those things. And, you know, I love to talk to her about it because she's just curious and she wants to know, she wants to understand, you know, it comes from a place of understanding and wanting to learn about those things. So I'm curious for you, man, like growing up, you know, you're talking about upstate New York, obviously it's not as diverse of a place as New York City, you know, so I'm sure there was like a little bit of a learning curve. I'd love to hear you kind of expound upon that a little bit, like the things you kind of learned and had to come face to face with about culture, you know, and about our society as a whole.
Yeah, that's right. I think in general, because we have access to more information now and more conversation via Twitter, and like you can get to anybody very quickly. I think the conversation has allowed me to understand more over time. And also because I'm deeply surrounded by my friend group and my peer group with people that don't look like me or think like me. And that helps, you know what I'm saying, to broaden the way you think about the world. So I remember one time we did a show at the Palladium out in LA, right? And we sold out the Palladium, and the promoter comes in and the promoter's like, yo, we sold out the Palladium. Last person to sell this out was Jay-Z. Wow. And we were like, wow. We're bugging. Yeah. And he's like, yo, and I know I heard y'all talking earlier today about how much you love Roscoe's Chicken and Waffles. Because we went to Roscoe's Chicken and Waffles down the road.
Yeah. The one on Pico, right?
Was it on Pico? No, it's on...
They have two locations.
The Palladium in Hollywood.
Oh, okay, yeah, okay, gotcha.
There was one down the road from the Palladium. So we went there and we was like, yo, we got Roscoe's, whatever. And the promoter was like, yo, because y'all sold out and I know that y'all love Roscoe's or whatever, he's like, I bought everybody Roscoe's Chicken and Waffle t-shirts, right? And now listen, I was like, woo! That's fire! And everybody else who was on the show with me, they were all black men. Yeah. And the promoter was a white guy. So I was like, yo, that's fire, right? And the promoter left the room and he was like, what the hell is wrong with this guy? Is this guy drunk? And I was like, what are you talking about? I was like, we got t-shirts and the Roscoe's, like I'm wearing it on stage tonight. He was like, Andy, you think I want a white guy to give me a t-shirt with chicken and waffles on it?
Damn.
I don't understand. You said you liked it. And he was like, no, Andy, you don't get it. Right. And so I was missing a layer of what was happening there because I don't think about that. Right. And those are some of the same group of people that are around me now. And so I have these experiences where I'll say something. I got a DM today, DM literally today from a kid. He goes, hey, I got a Latino question for you. He said, I know you're married to a Hispanic woman. Is it true that they're a little more crazy and emotional than other people?
Yo, and he's thinking about your wife. Like, even if he has innocent intentions, it's like, wait a, like, bro, man, what?
A white kid texted me, and he's like, I'm dating a Latina. Is it true? And I said, hey, you're white. Are you a mass shooter?
Wow.
Right.
And he's like, mass shooter? What are you talking about? I said, that's a dumb question, right? And he's like, yeah. And I was like, yeah. Because I would never pin on you a stereotype. Right. The same. So I worked through that a little bit with him, but you know, I come in with like assumptions, and I'm not saying I'm better than nobody. I've said dumb things and not understood certain things. I'm grateful that people were patient enough with me, walk with me through those things.
That's the key.
But just understanding, for me, a lot of it is understanding my privileges as a white heterosexual male, right? And so just like knowing that the world isn't balanced, it's not even. And so I have certain privileges as a man, like, first of all, then I have privileges as a white man, then I have privileges as well as a white Christian heterosexual man. Like, it allows me to move in certain circles other people can't. So when I realize that I have some of those advantages, I just try to leverage those advantages to help my friends and my family and my people that might not have those things, and try to level the playing field as much as I can. You know,
I love that you had people around you that were patient. You know what I mean? Like you said, that's the key right there. And that is our responsibility as people of color to not just fly off the handle when somebody says something or has a question that we deem, maybe offensive, or, because a lot of times people aren't necessarily, there are obviously some really disgusting people in the world that are just racist people, and lead with hate. But then there is the majority who just aren't, didn't grow up around a diverse group of people. You know what I mean? They lived in a bubble and it wasn't their fault, and they're trying to figure this out just like anybody else, And it's our responsibility as people of color that when it does come from just a place of innocence, we have to have patience and sit down and just say, hey, this is why this was offensive. This is why that mentality doesn't work. This is what the problem is,
That's right. That's right. A lot of times it's ignorance. Like I didn't even, like Dave Chappelle, I didn't know I couldn't say that.
Right. No, it's true. It's like they say, the antidote to ignorance is traveling. Like ignorance is, but that doesn't just mean getting on a plane at your local airport and moving around. Sometimes it's just traveling through different countries and cultures with your friend groups. Because it's like, even for me, like, I mean, everybody to a certain extent, even though I'm from New York, it's like I still grew up around Latinos and Black people all day. Like, the only white people I really met were like teachers and police officers and just some kind of office worker, whatever the case may be. It wasn't until I really got to college, you know what I mean? Or like, let's say high school, where I really started having like adult conversations with like white men and women who were my teachers, but they were young enough to know, they weren't that much older than me. And then in college, that's when I first like really got busy, you know what I mean? And diversifying who I'm having conversations with. So I never really spoke to like somebody of like the Muslim faith. I never really spoke to somebody who was Jewish. I never spoke to somebody who was rich, like super rich, you know what I mean? But was cool about it. And it broke down like just how small the world really is, you know what I mean? And how alike so much of us are, even though you take into consideration like, biographical differences. And then I think as an artist and as somebody who's a communicator with the world, because that's what we are, like, even on this platform, like, we're here and we're not in control of who presses play. And me as an artist, I'm always aware that I'm not in control of who presses play. I'm not in control of who loves my music. That is not up to me. That's up to them to receive that. But I want to speak to the entire world, and I feel like I can talk to the entire world. So let me make sure like I have love for everybody in the world as much as possible, and it comes with that, Right. But it's like you said, it's very important, like, to be educated by your peer group, because it's okay to not know.
Right.
And anytime something offensive comes at you in the direction, and you're like, wait, like, is this person informed and intentionally trying to like discredit my human beingness and whatever the case, or is this person really just not know what they're talking about? And now that it goes back to what is it? Revenge versus healing, like you were talking about. It's like I definitely want you to expound on that a little bit, but he has this concept where it's like it's true. Like so many moments in our lives, like you can either like get revenge and you can be justified in your anger, or you can wait, what's going to make me feel good at the end of this? What's going to like, well, how am I going to walk away from this, not justified with my anger, but a better person from this situation? And it's like, that's a very wise thing of you to say, man. I want you to like get into that a little bit more.
Yeah, that was, I talked about it in a podcast, but it came from a lyric in the song I have, 1988. I said, in the end, if you don't get healed, in the end, if you don't get healed, you get revenge. And even though it feels sweet, you never really win. It's hard to sleep, lay in bed, and have peace when you became the very thing you hated just to get even. Tell me what you believe in. It's nothing that you say, it's what you're doing every day. That whole thing is like getting revenge. You have to become the thing you hated just to get even. And so it's like getting revenge. It feels good because you feel justified by being hurt. Right. So like hurt is the core emotion that you're feeling. Like I've been hurt. I've been wronged by somebody. And so the only way that I feel like I'll be okay is if I can hurt them back. That's what revenge is. Right. But healing is a different route to it, because revenge doesn't actually give us the results we want, which is peace. Right. Like that's why you'll hear all these people say like, yeah, this person killed my family member, and then I came to their death sentence, and then it happened. It was like, yeah, it feels like justice was served, but doesn't bring them back.
Does it?
Like,
right. Revenge pretends to be resolution.
Right. And so what healing does is that changes the trajectory of the hurt. You know what I'm saying? Like you can put to bed the hurt. You know what I'm saying? So if you were to hurt me, right, I could hold resentment towards me, or I could hold resentment towards you, or I could have a conversation with you about it, and we could have an opportunity to apologize to each other, and then there could be healing. Right. And then when healing happens, now I can let go of all that hurt, and I can move into my life with peace. But a lot of us carry around resentment, bitterness, anger, and what's funny about it is, I think my mom said this. She's like, bitterness, resentment from hurt is like drinking poison and hoping the other person dies. Because they're going to bed, sleeping, chilling. They're not even thinking about you. Meanwhile, your day or your actions or whatever are being tore up because you can't let it go. So I think healing is the harder thing to do, but I think that's the direction I've been trying to pursue with the hurts in my life. Because I got to sleep. I got to live with myself. I got to go to sleep. Yeah. So my wife always says that phrase in Spanish, like, let them say what they want, do what they want, but they don't live with me.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's really that's kind of the ethos of what you're about, what you're speaking about is like unlearning a lot of those bad habits that we grew up on. You know what I mean? And a lot of the big themes that Radimus and I end up talking about is breaking generational curses, and not allowing the past, whether it's our parents or, society to dictate how we move. You know what I mean? Not allowing what we're told how we should be or those, whatever ideas, whatever thoughts are being told to us that we're pre-programmed to think, not allowing those things to control us, to be able to force ourselves to think independently and move in a better way. And one thing that I found really moving, I think it was a family photo. You were talking about your dad.
Yeah.
And you were talking about your wedding day, and I guess you get a text from your mom that he's not coming, and the whole time that's on your mind, going through the whole wedding process and things like that. I kind of want to hear your perspective, how you feel like going forward. You talked about, making a legacy for your kids one day. How do you kind of approach that, thinking about, the situations you went through with your father, and then now not allowing that to be something you bring on for another generation?
Yeah. I actually, I addressed this in like a new song that I have coming out on my new album.
Okay.
Not yet. But it's basically what I say is like, the opening line of the song is like, I've been waiting for the day when my father come around, like waiting for the moment when we'll paint the town. Then it all hit me last night. Nobody's coming. And then I've been waiting for a moment when my heart heals, waiting for someone to take away the pain that I feel. Then it all hit me last night. Nobody's coming. Like, if you spend your time in your life waiting for that apology or waiting for someone to be everything that you want them to be, you're gonna be waiting a long time because nobody's coming, and that might feel like a dismal approach to things. But what it does is it actually frees you from the expectations, like putting expectations on others and constantly being disappointed. So if I can't control that, what can I control? I can control me, the way I'm going to live as a husband, the way I'm going to live as a father, right? And so what that song ends up concluding is saying is like what if I'm the one that I've been like, what's the lyric? I don't even know my own lyrics, right? I said like, what if I'm the answer for things that I prayed?
Right.
That was one of the lyrics. And so it's like, what if we're the ones that we're waiting on? What if I just became the things that I wanted when I was growing up for somebody else? And I really think that's the only thing that we can do is become the very things that we knew we needed. Because that's how the world's going to change. You know what I'm saying? It's like each person taking responsibility for the way they want to see the world be. And it's not sexy. It's not like an easy answer because it's like a lifetime of commitment to reaching your potential. So that's why it's a difficult thing to do. But I think me and my wife are already starting to have conversations about having a kid. And, I'm just like, I want to make sure I prioritize my kid the same way I prioritize that Honda Civic. You know what I'm saying? Make sure I keep the right things in order.
Yeah. It's holding yourself accountable and holding yourself to a higher level. You know what I mean? Because I think, unfortunately, what happens with these cycles is I think a lot of people allow themselves to justify, well, my dad was like that, so, this kid's going to be just fine. You know what I'm saying? Or, you kind of say to yourself, it's like when they tell you, like when your parents kind of tell you, like back in my day, we used to have to walk 5 miles to school in the snow and this kind of thing. But the idea is that you don't want your kid to have experienced the same pain that you had. You know what I'm saying? So the justification isn't the same. You shouldn't be making those correlations because you want your kid to have better than what you had,
Right. But it's hard when you don't have models, bro. Yeah. We don't have, all right, I just know I don't want it to be that.
Right.
Like, what do I
want? But then what is
it?
Exactly.
So I think that's why I've taken, as much as I can, some sort of personal responsibility to be like, all right, I'm going to try to model my life in a way people could, even though I couldn't mentor people, like I could one-on-one, I could be a model from a distance to a degree. And I think for like guys like me who didn't grow up with a dad, when I peeped people who were living a life that I wanted, I tried to get around them and make them my mentors. You know what I'm saying? So this one dude, Dave, I was just like, man, this guy's got a wife, kids, family. He's a cool dude. He loves God. I'm like, I like that. I want to be like that.
Right.
He's like, I'm going to the grocery store. Can I go with you? Just hang out, walk with you, help. You know what I'm saying? And I put myself in the way of people that I wanted to be like. And I was just willing to be like, yeah, no, I'll just push the car, load the car up, like whatever you need, so I could get around that and soak that up. And so, now there's things like 11 a.m. every morning with me and a buddy of mine, Steve Weatherford. He's the punter for the Giants.
Yeah.
We're doing a Zoom call at 11 a.m. It's called Man Academy. And we do like a 30-minute talk on whatever thing we're trying to work on, and then we work out. So I'm doing that every day.
That's it.
And, it's just like when I think about what manhood is, right? Basically what hip hop told me is like, how many girls can you sleep with? How much money do you have? And like, how much can you achieve? On the baseball field, football field, wherever. When I think about who I want to be like as a man, I think about Jesus, right? And Jesus was homeless, was not married, and he just didn't have any of these things that what we consider manhood today. Yeah. And so I'm like, but that's kind of backwards. If he was the ultimate man,
right? Like,
then what does my culture say about manhood? Like, there's a disconnect. So I'm on that pursuit and on that path right now of trying to understand who he is and be more like him.
I'll pop in here one more time. We'll take a quick break and then we'll be right back. All right, we are back, and now the rest of this convo.
You're one of the artists. Obviously, I really rock with that joint Donuts off the EP.
Fonte.
The Sword, yeah, with Fonte. And Fonte is one of those MCs. Jay-Z we keep bringing up. And just hip hop in general, I think we're all just kind of tired of the archetypes that we were sold, that ownership of material things is the highest place to be, and vulnerability is a sign of weakness, like we already stated. But it's one thing to know it. It's another thing to start the change. It's another thing to start enabling a difference and being conscientious of the information that we're recording. Because when you're speaking about fathers and you were speaking about, your father not being in your life, like I grew up with my father, but my father wasn't my only father. The music that I listened to parented me. My teachers parented me. Anybody who was 2 years older than me was some kind of figure that I looked up to. And, the realer I think I got with my music, or at least what started that path, was like me really having to reflect and be like, man, like, how many people's feelings for today am I responsible for when it comes to like what I say and how I say it and the perspective that I decide to share? And lately I've been on that tip as well of just like, man, like, if I am like, because I also believe you should enjoy what Earth has to offer. And that's the thing. Like, it's not that, jewelry is terrible, investment in cars are like terrible, and you shouldn't be happy about what you own and work for. Like, that's not the thing. It's just that it's not as important as spirituality. It's just not as important as love. It's not as important as legacy and taking care of your family and ingesting good into the world. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's beautiful that, like, I feel like that's been on the front of your mind, and I'm curious as to how that continues to evolve, because I feel like you already are aligning yourself within that, even through music. And one thing I wanted to talk to you about, if you're comfortable with it, and I always peep this from like back in the day. Like, I remember when you were on Sway like years ago, and just like starting to crack through. You know what I mean? Like, you're how I found out about Reach Records, all of that stuff. And there's this label of Christian rapper, right? Mm-hmm. And what I love about, at least what I gathered from you and listening to your music, is that God is present. There is references to loving God. There's references to Jesus. There's reference to your faith. And there's references to the effect that has had on your life. But never do I feel like, if you don't agree with what I'm saying, then don't listen to me. Never do I feel like if you aren't aligned with my specific faith and my Christianity, then this music isn't for you. And I'm just first of all, I commend you for that, because it's something that I think I work on as well in my music. I want my spirituality present. I speak about God and Jesus and religion and faith and all of that in my music. And one thing I've like fought hard to do in my writing was to never make it limited to somebody who like doesn't believe in what I believe. To not feel like they can touch into the music. So like, can you tell us, like, just tell me about your process in that, and your writing and your perspective and all that? Because I think it's a very unique one, and I think you do it really well. And if you already get your flowers for it, you deserve more. You know what I mean?
Thank you, man. Appreciate that. It's a nuanced conversation, and most people dismiss the conversation pretty early on, because they'll just say, "Oh, if that's the title of that, like Christian rap, it's it's not for me. I'm out." So, I think it does a disservice to the actual art in a lot of ways, that title, because it shuns people away from even thinking there's something good there for them. So
right.
That's kind of the double-edged sword of that title is one, it can rally people who are like, oh, I want to hear that because I'm a Christian, right? I want somebody who is going to help me listen to hip-hop that's not going to be crazy all the time. Right. And then it's also a deterrent at the same time. So it's this weird thing, and I used to get really upset about it. I used to be like, "Yo, fam, just stop saying that." Like, labeling that. I'd be doing interviews, and they'd be like, "So," and I'd be like, "Yo, cut the interview, bro. Are you trying to bury me? Like, nobody's gonna listen to my joints if you just keep saying that. Like, stop." What I realized is like sometimes these things are out of your control. Like it's just it is what it is at this point. Like, people have come with that title, and they're gonna always have a title. And I'm like, whatever, do what you want with the title. I'm gonna focus on what I can control, which is making the best music possible. And if that's gonna be the title you give me, we're gonna say, well, but damn, buddy could rap. But you know what I'm saying? I'm gonna change your perspective. So I think I wasn't always as fluent in my conversation about faith because I'm growing and changing as a person. You know what I'm saying? So early 20s, when you're in your like most idealistic phase and you're like, we're going to take over the world. You know what I'm saying? Like I was very like, Jesus, you know?
Right.
And you know, I think all of us go through a phase when we're like, whatever our thing is we believe in, you know, it's like, we just going hard for it. And then you get a little older, you get punched in the face a few times and you realize, oh, the world ain't black and white. There's a lot of gray area. And if people don't agree with me or don't understand where I'm coming from, that's cool because they're on a journey. Like they're traveling, they're discovering. And so I become more gracious. Like even in that song 1988, so I said it's like, I'm a little bit older, less eager to prove something, more confident who I am. It doesn't make for good TV, but it makes me a better man.
Better man, yes,
like,
yes. I was just listening to that, yo.
Like, it doesn't make for good TV, someone who's patient and gracious and understanding. Good TV is like, y'all want to beef
middle
it
fingers,
out.
yes.
You know what I'm saying? So that's, but that's really where I'm at is like, yo, if I know I was bugging at one point in my life, like, how could I not be gracious towards someone else? So that has evolved into my writing process where as I'm creating, I always want to speak genuinely from the heart, but I also have a little consideration in there where I don't think Christians are very conscientious often of what they're doing and how it relates to a real world that might be trying to understand just the basics, right? And so, I feel like I see Christians do this a lot. And this isn't to hate on Christians, like, in any way. There's this thing that like a lingo or a terminology, right, that can start to become very common among them, that if you're not inside that group and you don't know that terminology, then you feel left out. Yeah. And so I try to, in a lot of ways in my writing and my creating, is consider someone else who might not understand that lingo, that terminology, and give it to them in a different way. So, you know, like those are simple things, but that's not just in my music. That's in how I do life.
Real life, exactly.
Real life.
And the thing is with me, it's like, the reason why I even brought up is because you don't sound like what you would consider a Christian rapper to be like. And hip hop is like one of the most like God is probably the most popular word in hip hop. When Jesus and praying and like, Kendrick Lamar, how does he start his album? J. Cole, Jay-Z, from the beginning to now has expressed his growth and his faith. And even, I don't know if you checked out, I mean, you should just check this out because I'm going to shout it out. Like Peter Cottontail, I don't know if you're aware of him. Like he's on a social experiment, but he just dropped this album, Pray. And I'm just like, yo, like this album is heat. You know what I'm saying? Like the music is beautiful. And I think it's like this, it's like a negative stereotype because it pretends to like only service one, but in reality, like it's okay for me to tap into what somebody else's perspective is. You know what I mean? Like, why is that a deterrent? Like, if anything, that should generate interest. You know what I mean? Because and for some reason, I don't know why it's like, oh, that's bad music. It's like, or like for some reason, like it isn't like up to par. It's like, what does it have to do with the quality of the music? You just need more people keep rocking. You know what I mean? So I also wanted to ask you, it's a bit of a funny question, but did you listen to Jesus King? And did you listen to like the whole Kanye projects and all that? What's your perspective on, I have my own ideas, but what's your perspective on him being like, you know, starting from where he's from? He's always been vocal about his faith. Yeah. Kanye's been a Christian rapper to a degree, to an extent, his entire life. I think now he's just taking the firm step of like, nah, this is the only, specifically down to the verbiage, everything, the only thing I'm speaking about. Like, what's your perspective on that? You know what I mean? Because this is somebody who's like, you know, one of the most popular men in the world. You know what I mean? Like taking this stance. I mean, he's one of my favorite artists of all time, period. Like, I just love his creativity, his fearlessness. So if he would have dropped a Satan worship project, I probably would have been listening. I'd been like, yo, what's Kanye up to? Right. You know, I just love seeing what he's up to because he's a fearless creative, and you know, I try to be more like that as well. So he's also a producer, rapper, and like that's my bag too. So I just love that dude. And then when I find out he's Team Jesus, I was like, dope, you know. Let's rock, right? You know, like. I'll just say this, like, one, I thought the music was dope. Like, I enjoyed it.
I had this funny conversation.
Water was crazy. That's one of my favorite joints on that album.
Yeah, like, here's the thing. When it first came out, most people was like, it's all right. And I was like, yo, I could see that. But as we were sitting around breakfast talking about it, everyone started talking about the little parts that they liked. And it was like, yo, but the saxophone was great. And it was like, yeah. And then you hear the on Water, you know, when Ty Dolla $ign does like the harmonies to open it up. Yeah, that part's crazy too. And I was like, how about the choir? Yeah, that part's great. And then when we got to the end of the conversation, I was like, so we like that.
Right, yeah, exactly. Right, exactly.
So I thought it was dope. I mean, is it his greatest work ever? Like, you know, I don't think so, but I just thought it was a dope piece. And here's the thing, like, the guy is on a journey himself. So I think, like I told you, when you're first overcome by the idea that, like, yo, I have a new life, I have a new path, a new direction, like, God saved me, like, you're so ecstatic. It's kind of like when you fall in love for the first time and you're like, oh, this girl is just fire. Like, it's the greatest thing ever. And it's goosebumps and that's all this stuff. But over time, those goosebumps and some of those things fade, but it doesn't mean that the love isn't real. It just looks different. Right? It's just deeper. It might not just be like bubbly feelings, but it's a deep feeling of peace and commitment, you know? So I think that same thing happened with me creatively. It's like I was so hoorah at the beginning, and then I was like, oh, there's nuance to this. And I feel like that's kind of what he might be going through as well. Like, the way he's rapping about God now might be different 3 years from now. I know it's different 5 years from now, right? And that's okay. He's allowed to be on his journey. Like, he's like literally rapping Bible verses. He's like,
yo, that was crazy. And then like, Jesus clean the music. I was just like, yo, like, if somebody doesn't pray but memorize the song, they be praying. Right. Like, that was it blew my mind, you know what I mean? Like, and one of my homies said that too. Like, we were talking about it, you know, he dropped the film, the same Kanye production, you know, he's going around doing everything, and obviously people have backlash. Like, for me, I love seeing the evolution of artists I love. And even if I'm not in, like, it doesn't rank, I don't even like ranking albums anymore. I'm just like, yo, that's a phase in that person's life, and my memories are attached to it. So when I'm listening, like, Jesus is King and all that, and at first the same thing, I was like, all right, like, it's, because it's similar to Ye, you know what I mean? It's similar. It's just like the subject matter is much more firm. One of my homies was like, yo, man, look, he's changing the game again. Like, when's the last time the whole world was looking forward to 12 a.m. for something that was labeled Christian music? I'm just like, yo, like, he's like taking it on his back to kind of like debunk the same thing. Debunk subject matter has nothing to do, like, it's part of it, but it's like the musicality and greatness, the intention is what's most important. You know what I'm saying? And the evolution of the man is like, we just need more examples of that. And that's how our culture is going to continuously evolve, because you have more examples of how different paths can go and arrive to what their idea of success is. You know what I mean? So it's like beautiful.
And it's an interesting thing too, because a lot of people be like, a lot of people, when they have the Kanye conversation with me, they'd be like, yo, Andy, see, he rapping Bible verse, he doing X, Y, Z. Why do you do that? And I'm like, yeah, but you do realize he had a completely different path than I had. Like, the man made Gold Digger and all these other records, like
he made a lot of those. Yeah.
He came up this way and then he went backwards. And so it's the way he's gonna be received is different.
Yeah.
Where for me, if I come in with that label, I'm received differently off the bat. So it's made it a much more difficult path for me. I didn't realize it was going to be that when I set out. But, you know, it was like, oh, this is kind of the cards I've been dealt in the music industry. But, or the path I've carved for myself. But it is funny because people are like, so when y'all doing a record, I was like, when he calls me, like,
let's do it.
We ain't all on the same page, but I'm excited that another person is on their journey with Jesus. And I think it's kind of weird too to just hold certain people, be more excited about one person than somebody else. So it's kind of conflicting as well. But I'm glad he's making good music. I'm glad he loves God and he's on his journey, and I'm here to watch, you know.
I love that. We'll let you get out here in a second, but I think one thing that's important is, like, it's the idea that even when you say something like you're a gigantic Kanye West fan, and you're a Christian, it breaks that stigma I think that a lot of people have where they would be like, oh, well, you're a Christian rapper. That means you only like secular music. You know what I mean? You can't appreciate anything outside of it. And I think that those kinds of conversations are important because it's like, no, just because I'm Christian of faith doesn't mean that I can't support or appreciate the art behind things that aren't necessarily Christian, So I think it's huge.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I barely listen to Christian music. I had a tough time with it.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I agree, guys, and I'm glad that like y'all like are willing to like dive into the nuance of that conversation because I think that's what it needs. Mm-hmm. And more compassion, more understanding in general.
Bro, it's the same thing as like on the last project, Work in Progress. You have to join the country joint. You're just like, just listen to country. It's like, wait. Like I was always told country was whack, but I never tuned into it. It's like, let me decide if it's whack or not. And then same thing when I got to college and started listening to like Hank Williams and Hank Williams Jr. and just Willie Nelson, all of this stuff. I'm just like, yo, like this music is crazy. It's not just the Nelly over and over again remix. You know what I mean? Like it's like there's a lot of heat in all genres. There's a lot of great things in like all countries and all music preferences and whatever the case may be. As long as we're down to like, and that's the thing, it's the nuance of like sureness of yourself that you can like what you like no matter what anybody else likes or thinks, and you have your own taste, but then be willing enough to accept somebody else's world for a minute.
I mean, it's even you being a rapper of Dominican descent. You know what I mean? It's like you don't have to make Latin music. You know what I mean?
I don't like all Dominicans who make music.
Right,
you know what I mean? It's like, yeah, I'm Dominican, like, like you see the flag in the back. But it's like, you can be whack and be Dominican. You can be whack and be from Brooklyn. You can be whack and grow up with me. Like, what does that have to do with anything?
We can all have our own backgrounds, our own belief systems, but that doesn't mean we can't coexist in different worlds. You know what I mean? Like, there is a niche for us in each thing, and we can all still have an opinion, and it should be, accepted and listened to regardless of what our background is. We can all still coexist. That's
hot to me.
Right.
That's an ill world. Real quick before you bounce, I know you said you about to cut. I know I want to make sure, you get back to what you're doing. Coming in hot. Yo, that joint is crazy, bro. Like, can you and even something like that, I feel like you continuously are evolving. If I'm not mistaken, that's the only joint you dropped this year, or like that's the last song that you released so far. And it feels like you just continuously are finding ways to like expand what your role is, because if somebody does like take the minute to just tap in with you for a minute and go through the discography, like you're not really doing one thing all day in this, you know what I mean? Like you're playing with sounds, you're playing with the vocal performance, your mixing is like ill. I pay attention to mixing, so I'm like, yo, he's paying attention to mixing and voice and sounds and where the drums are hitting and the effects and whatever the case may be. And it's like then you come in the joint, coming in Howard, y'all just turning up. And I'm just like, yo, like, that's crazy, bro. Like, I just wanted to tip my hat to that. And, like, I kind of want to know a little bit about that real quick before you bounce out, like, the idea and the,
Yeah. So, Lecrae and I were heading on a headline tour together called Better Late Than Never. And we were like, yo, we should do a record for that tour just to, like, promote it. So he was in Cali, I was in Cali at the same time. And we were like, all right, let's just get this studio session. So I was on the tour bus at the time, and I pulled up like 5 or 6 beats, and I just started laying like demos and ideas. Mm-hmm. Sometimes that pressure, like you have to be there tonight.
Gotta make something,
It's like, all right. I started scrambling and putting down ideas. We showed up at the studio, and I started playing 4 or 5 ideas, and that beat came on, and he was like, "Yo, this drum is crazy." Shout out Sac Passe, who made the beat, and
I thought that was an ad-lib. I didn't even know that was a tag. All right, I gotta check out, homie.
Yeah, Sac Passe, he's dope. He did a lot of work on Watch the Throne, actually. He's like
dope.
So he made that beat, he sent it through, and then I just had all these mumbles, and I was like, I'm coming in hot, and I played that for him. He's like, yo, that's crazy, let's do that. So right there in the studio that night, we all started like penning bars, and I couldn't really write anything. I'm weird where I gotta kind of go off to the side and be dolo, and I'm not like everyone's in the studio. I'm just writing raps in the corner. Like I can't do that. So they wanted us to turn it in, and I had a European tour like the next day. 2 days later, I had to fly out. So I get on the plane and I was like, yo, I'm going to have to literally record this somewhere in Europe. Like, I don't even know how I'm going to get this done. So I brought my little microphone. I brought this right here. This one.
Crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I just threw it in my backpack and my little Apollo. And between shows, I was setting up the little laptop in the hotel room and I was rapping. So I got a good chunk of it done in like Hamburg. And then the other chunk where I finished it was in Amsterdam. So I worked on half the verse and I was working out cadences and I got there and I finished the rest. And I actually got video. My man was like filming me. And I got my shirt off and I got like a pizza box next to me.
doing your thing. Yeah.
If you go deep enough in the Instagram, I posted that video. And so I finished that verse. I sent it in. I finally figured out what the lyrics were for the chorus and I made the Coming in Hot piece. And so we put it out just as like a Lucy to promote the tour.
Wow.
And lo and behold, it just like it
blows up.
Like I got a video this week of freaking Steph Curry and his kids like rapping the whole thing.
Wow.
Like,
was that the video that Lecrae posted? Is that what it was? That was that?
Yeah,
wow, bro.
Posted it on mine. It's like Riley's rapping the whole thing. This is my favorite song. And then he used it on his Facebook special, and it was played at the NBA Finals. So you never know, man. Like you could be one song away from people discovering who you are. And I think that song ticked off a few boxes. It's like one, it had a really catchy beat. Two, it had a phrase that you want to remember and say.
Coming in hot, right?
And three, I think it was just executed well. So it. Wish I could do that every time I stepped up to the bat.
Right. But that's fire, bro. What do you got going on like rest of the year? What can people expect? What do you got going on for people to check out?
Yeah, so I'm working on an album as we speak. I was supposed to finish it this month, but I'm a little behind. So that's what I'm doing every day, every night. I'm here. I had to move my setup from the studio to like in this extra bedroom we have. I'm recording in here. And just, it's not perfect, but it's you do the best you can with what you have and you make the most of it. And like, what are you going to do? You're going to make excuses like Corona and I can't go to the studio. It's like,
right,
bro, that's it.
Figure it out.
So that's what we're doing. And we got to get a joint on there, man.
Yo, let's do it. I'm ready. I'm ready when you are, bro. You know what it is.
I find the right beat, man. It's got to be a sweet spot.
Yeah. I'm proud of you, bro. Yo, keep rocking. Make sure you keep putting your evolution out there for the people because you don't know. I know people hit you up because people hit me up, and this like you be surprised who you're speaking for, who you're speaking to, who you're relating, and it takes digging deep and doing what you love. We were kind of speaking about it before you jumped on. Like it's one thing to get love, and it's another thing to get love for the thing that you love doing. And it's like I love growing. And I love showing that. And I love when people show me that because it inspires me. And it's just a cyclical thing. So, you know what I mean? Keep rocking. And thank you for tuning in with us, bro. You're the man.
Yo, appreciate y'all for having me, man. It was great combo. Feel like these don't happen often. So it's dope y'all doing it. And, congratulations also on the movie and everything else is going on.
Oh, thank you, bro. We hustling, man. I'm trying to keep up.
That's it, bro. Love it. Come down, see me in the A soon.
No, I got you. I'm supposed to tap in a minute. My manager's been, you know what it is. Studio culture, all that stuff is out there. So I'll be out there.
Come on.
Beautiful, bro. Appreciate you, man. First Generation Talks, another episode down. Andy Mineo, appreciate you, brother.
Appreciate you, bro.
Take care, man.
Man, I hope you guys got something out of that conversation. Like I said, it was great to revisit it, and I'll touch on that for our conclusions too. But first, we'll take one more quick break, and then we'll be right back.
Time for conclusions.
All right, so I'm a big fan, if you haven't been able to tell, of at times revisiting old things that I've done. I think there's wisdom in it. I think there's wisdom that at the time you possessed that you weren't even able to recognize, right? I don't even know if that's wisdom per se. But you were thinking in a lot of different ways, particularly during the pandemic. During that time, as crazy of a time period as it was, as dark of a time period as it felt like, there was also like, I think about it, I'm like, man, I was having a lot of really introspective conversations with myself. The people that I talked to, we really were just like stopped for a second and were really trying to figure shit out and had the luxury, for better or worse, to kind of have a very slow day-to-day life as a result of the world being shut down. And we had a lot of time to really just fucking think about life and think about what we really wanted out of it. And I think that conversation is a reflection of that. And again, I think about to kind of, I guess, put a pin on why I think I was touched by this particular episode again. I feel like I got very comfortable over the last 2 years to a degree. I think I lost a little bit of that edge that I had of always being prepared for what's next. And, or always working towards the next thing. And listen, it's a balance, right? Because I think also mentally I'm healthier than I've maybe been in a long time, and physically healthier. But with that said, I think I've allowed outside factors now, as a result of not being as sort of hyper present or hyper hungry. I've allowed outside factors to now have far more control over me than I would like. And as we sort of go into these uncertain times, particularly with this next 4 years, Donald Trump was just inaugurated. We'll talk about that on Thursday. But there's a lot up in the air emotionally, spiritually, and economically, and with technology and the way that it's moving so fucking quickly and changing, and trends are moving so fast, and all these different things. There's a tremendous amount of uncertainty, just like there was during this time period in 2020 during the pandemic. And it was a reminder for me, hearing that conversation, hearing what he was speaking about, his mindset, a further reminder and a further little push of let's get back to not being so comfortable and not being unhealthy, but thinking about the future and moving in a way that continues to set us up so that we can maintain the level of control that makes us happy. For me, when I first bought my property, that was really supposed to be the first start of many things like that. And to a degree, I've opened other entrepreneurial ventures and, done stuff rental wise and blah, blah, blah. But I do think I sort of stopped that movement of setting up these little, I don't want to say fail safes, because I don't think anything really is, but setting myself up to be in a position where I didn't have to rely on my creative work, my art, to be the main thing. And I think I got a bit comfortable, a bit complacent, and sort of allowed that to be my reality more and more. And I think now, again, as we go through more uncertain times, there's a level of discomfort there. The fact that I don't feel as diversified economically as I once aimed to be, as industries change, as nightlife is ever changing right now, and it's really getting harder and harder playing gigs, and as the entertainment industry continues to shrink, and there's less and less opportunities, and just so much going on, and a lot of the money that was being spent on podcasting and all these different things from the pandemic on, they've cut back now. There's a correction happening now, and then again, I don't know what the fuck's gonna happen with this president. So for me, it's realigning with a bit of that urgency, I guess, is what I'm trying to get at. And I loved this conversation, hearing him talk about it during that time period, hearing me, almost 5 years ago, before he was ever a property owner, and at a point where I was probably the most lost I've ever been in my entire life. But at a place of also beginning to figure out what the next steps were for me. 2020 was a huge jump for me personally and career-wise. And it's just interesting to go back to that conversation and I thought it could be incredibly inspiring for a lot of people to just hear how someone like Andy thinks, and to maybe even just a reminder of like that weird time period we were in 2020, as we again prepare to enter unknown times here for the next 4 years with this president. So, I just wanted to share that episode. Again, I was like in my backyard with my dog, and it was like making me like, you kind of forgot some of the things that you learned there that you were applying to your life at the time, or you lost some of that hunger, or you forgot to implement some of those plans you were looking at. So maybe we can start getting that in the back of your head again. I think, again, like the universe, God sends these little reminders to you in certain ways. And that random email I got that then made me kind of like revisit this old podcast that I'd forgotten about completely for the most part. And now I think kind of like gave me something to think about for the foreseeable future. So wanted to share that with y'all. With that said, I'll catch you on Thursday as we break down, interesting times. There's a lot to talk about. Like, what the fuck is Elon Musk doing? Like, what is happening? It's like, you expect it to be crazy, but it almost feels like it somehow manages to be even crazier than even your most wildest expectations. We'll talk about it. Thursday Trends. I'll catch y'all then. In the meantime, be safe, and we'll talk soon. Peace.